Hello, everyone. My name is John Barnshaw. I'm the Vice President for Research and Data Science at Astra. And joining me today are Christopher Mullen and Allison Cadlick, who will be presenting some work on 7 principles to promote student success. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the overview of our agenda today. I'm going to introduce our presenters, provide you a little bit of a context of why we think they're great for Aspire and how they align to our work. And then we'll get into the 7 principles and the report that underlines a lot of these principles. And at the end, we'll have some time for question and answers and hopefully some takeaway and action items for you. So I'm very excited about this report. When it came out earlier this year, I immediately thought this is wonderful research and it aligns so well to many of the things that we're doing right now at Astra. You can see here are the 7 principles on the slide here. And all of this work aligns to the work that we are doing at Astra. From alignment of the course schedule to refinement and student success. So I'm very excited that, that Christopher and Allison are here to present today, and look for a report that's coming out soon about how these principles align to the work and the case studies of things at Astra. So our presentation speakers are Christopher Mullen. Dr. Mullen is the director of Strong Start to Finish and works very closely with Education Commission of the States, as well as Allison Cadlick. Dr. Cadlick is a founding partner of SOVA. So without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to them. Chris?
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for taking time to be with us today. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to learn with and from you. At the Education Commission of the States, we believe in the power of learning from experience. Every day, we provide education leaders with unbiased information and opportunities for collaboration. We do this because we know that when policymakers are informed, they create better education policy. One example of our effort to support systemic change is Strong Start to Finish, which is a project and initiative of the Education Commission of the States. There is a persistent problem among colleges and universities for students placed in developmental courses like math and English. They are not completing the courses and in most cases should not be taking them in the first place. While developmental education outcomes are deeply troubling for state and institutional leaders who are focused on state attainment and institutional performance goals, and practitioners who care deeply about the students they teach, for low-income students, students of color, and returning adults who see college as a path to something greater, our collective failure to adequately support their success is a heavy burden to bear. This is why Strong Start to Finish exists. We were developed to leverage what we know. Our goal is clear: to increase the number and proportion of students who complete a gateway math and English course in their first year of study aligned to a program of study to reduce equity gaps in college completion. It is substantial but necessary, but it can't be done in a silo. We are not a new initiative. Rather, we're built to further support the work of institutions and systems across the country that they already have underway. We understand this work is comprehensive and applaud the courage it takes to take it on and wish you continued success after this webinar. Our work is really centered in 3 work areas at Strong Start to Finish. We engage with 13 systems whose actions and evidence-based policies are working, succeeding in their goal of giving college students a strong start toward their degree. We work with these systems to deepen our collective knowledge of how they are achieving these results, and more importantly, how these best practices can be scaled up across institutions of all sizes and locations. And finally, we work with funders and 17 partners to grow a network of knowledge so that actionable evidence-based policies and practices can be applied and executed on broad scale. In summary, we connect higher education systems and institutions with proven tools, quality technical assistance, and financial and human capital resources to give every student the best start on a path toward their degree. At the core of all of our work is a document called the Core Principles, and I'll now turn to my colleague and friend Allison Kedlak from SOVA to introduce them to you.
Great, thank you so much, Chris, and thanks for having us, John. So the Core Principles is the anchoring document. It's a set of principles that ground and guide the work at Strong Start to Finish and ensure that the wide range of work undertaken across the network is oriented by the same set of commitments and priorities. So the Core Principles for Transforming Remediation Within a Comprehensive Student Success Strategy isn't just a document that sits on a shelf. It is a dynamic statement from the field that anchors and orients the work at Strong Start. So this is the 2020 version. It's the third update of the resource since 2012, and it's informed by the insights of researchers, practitioners, advocates, and policymakers. And it's based on the latest research and evidence. And so as a living document that is updated over time, we have the opportunity with these principles to really stay anchored in what is happening right now, what people know, what we do and don't know about what's working in reforming remediation at scale. So what I'm going to do is walk through the principles at a glance, and then I'm going to dig in a little bit and go through each one very quickly before we get back to sharing a little bit more about the resources available from Strong Start, and then open it up for Q&A. So the principles at a glance. The first principle is about identifying academic direction and support. So research shows that the sooner that students sort of identify and know what they are planning to do and create a plan, the more likely they are to complete that plan. And so this is about aligning the students' educational experience with their goal, beginning with the end in mind. The second principle is one that says that enrollment in college level math and English really should be the default approach to placement. And I'll share a little bit more about what's known about placing students, but this principle is focused on as many students as possible placing into college level math and English. Principle 3 is about providing supports, embedded student supports. So the kinds of integrated supports that students need to be successful outside of the classroom, inside of the classroom, and making sure that faculty and staff have the supports that they need to effectively implement innovative interventions at scale. Principle 4 is about streamlining remediation options. So this is an acceleration principle, and it's focused on the importance of providing remediation in the context of credit-bearing courses rather than providing long prerequisite sequences of remediation, which prove ineffective for students. Principle 5 is about aligning courses to programs of study, particularly math. So this is about ensuring that students are provided a variety of math pathways that align to their career goals and the careers of today and tomorrow. So this is about the right math for the right goals. Principle 6 is about using data effectively to understand exactly what's happening to students and to offer the insights required to make mid-course corrections in the implementation of these interventions. And so using data effectively is about using it in real time, using it in finely disaggregated ways to really understand what's happening to students, what's working, what's not working, and what needs to change. Principle 7 is about prioritizing the student experience, and this is a refinement principle. This was the new principle in the 2020 update, and it's really an equity-grounded principle that's focused on elevating the student experience, ensuring that quantitative data are complemented by rich qualitative data, and that students themselves are treated as the experts of their experience. So those are the principles at a glance. I'm going to give you a quick overview of each of the principles now and dig in a little bit. All right, so principle 1, this is the alignment principle. On the left on each of these slides is the principle itself, the shorthand, and then on the right are a few of the key points about each of the principles. So as you can see, principle 1 is every student's post-secondary education begins with a well-designed process that empowers them to choose an academic direction and build a plan that starts with passing credit-bearing gateway courses in the first year. So this is about supporting students' sense of academic purpose because we know how much that plays, the role that plays in persistence and completion. It's about institutions providing curricular coherence and clear pathways. So for those of you who are familiar with guided pathways work, this is very much a guided pathways kind of principle. It's about using meta majors to help students explore responsibly, but find a program of study as early as possible that works for them. And then it's about empowering students to build a full academic plan during their first year. Again, this is about the empowerment of students to take charge of their education and to build the plan that's going to work for them. And then it's also about providing the supports that students need to be successful, because all of this work ultimately is about lowering artificial barriers to student success. And so having the right supports in place at the outset is essential. So principle 2 is the placement principle. This is about enrolling students, as many students as possible, in college level math and English, because many, many more students can be successful in college level math and English with the right supports than are currently placed as such. So the principle is placement of every student is based on multiple measures using evidence-based criteria instead of through a single standardized test. So what research shows definitively is that the use of single high-stakes standardized tests raise artificial barriers to students who would otherwise be successful in credit-bearing courses. There's a growing body of research from around the country that is also showing that high school GPA and high school course taking are better predictors of a student's ability to be successful than the outcomes of a high-stakes standardized test, whether that's a placement test or whether that's something like the ACT or SAT. So use of multiple measures, high school GPA, high school course taking, even guided self-placement and self-reported GPA are showing promise for achieving much more equitable access to gateway courses for all students, but particularly for students from historically and persistently minoritized community, Black and Latinx students. So there's still a lot more to be known about the right combination of measures that work best for students, but there's also a lot that we can say now about what is no longer appropriate, and that is the high stakes single standard of placing students in Dev Ed. All right, so principle 3 is about providing adequate supports. The principle goes like this: campus communities transform policies and practices to ensure that every student is provided with high value learning experiences and with the supports needed to remove barriers to success, especially students from historically underrepresented, disenfranchised, and minoritized communities. So one of the things that was particularly strengthened this time around in the 2020 update was the visible commitment to equity and to closing equity gaps. And we can really see it in this principle. So what we find here is that successful implementation of any of these interventions that are proven to be more effective than traditional approaches requires ongoing both skill building, but also will building across the entire institution, the college or university. People really need to understand at a deep level how this is a fundamental shift from business as usual. Excuse me. It's also about providing integrated, embedded, holistic student supports as students need them to help lower barriers to student success. It's also about providing culturally responsive, well-supported learning journeys, and about ongoing professional development and authentic engagement of faculty and staff. All right, principle 4 is about streamlining remediation options. So this principle goes like this. Program appropriate college level math and English courses are offered to every student through evidence-based integrated support models designed to accelerate gateway course success. So this principle, again, this is an acceleration principle. The point here is that there is definitive evidence now that traditional approaches to remediation raise artificial barriers to gateway course completion and harm students. So co-requisite approaches in which remediation is provided in the context of credit-bearing courses significantly and sometimes dramatically improve outcomes for students across race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, disability status. So co-requisite approaches are proving to be significantly, dramatically more effective than traditional prerequisite sequences. This also is about default placement of students in credit-bearing courses with the appropriate supports, and that this should not be the exception. This should be the norm for students. There's also a lot that we know about models of co-rec that work. There's also a lot that's unknown about the variety of models and their effectiveness for what students under what circumstances. And so there's lots of different approaches to co-rec, but there are a few things that we're seeing now are common features of high quality models. And that is really tight alignment between instructor teaching the credit-bearing course, and either it's the same instructor or another instructor who is really well aligned with the instructor in the credit-bearing course who's providing the remediation. It's also the case that beginning with the backward mapping of outcomes from the credit-bearing course and embedding remediation in this way is much more effective than having developmental components of the course developed as a standalone. So there are a couple of things that we're learning that kind of sit across models as key features of high quality, but there's still a lot more to know. The evidence, though, is very exciting, and it's not in one context, it's not in one state, it is everywhere that people are innovating at scale and working on refining and improving models that co-requisite approaches are proving more effective. All right, principle 5. So every student is provided with access to multiple pathways such as statistics and data science that integrate rigorous math appropriate to different disciplines into the well-paying careers of today and tomorrow. So the standard historical traditional practice of using algebra as the bar, which every student needs to get over, is not only raising artificial barriers to students who are not pursuing STEM careers, but it's also not aligned with what employers of today are saying that their students need. So increasingly, providing alternative math pathways to students who are in other programs of study aligned to the careers that they seek to have is proving more effective, and it's lowering, again, artificial barriers that have been raised for students. All right, so this is, we're getting now to principles 6 and 7, which are more about learning and the role of learning, data, evidence, and real listening to students in this work. All right, so principle 6, using data effectively, something many institutions struggle to do, but that more and more are committing themselves to really getting a handle on in a variety of ways. So for this and for our work, what we mean by using data effectively is that every student is supported in staying on track to a post-secondary credential through the institution's effective use of early momentum metrics and mechanisms to generate, share, and act on finely disaggregated student progression data. So this is about using data to actually inform decision-making, but also to make mid-course corrections and to really understand what's happening to students. Early momentum metrics include credit momentum, gateway course momentum, persistence momentum. These are the things that we're seeing are sort of the keys to understanding the extent to which students are able to persist and accelerate toward their credential. Fine disaggregation of data according to race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability status is essential because far too often, and in the early days of reform, like developmental education reform, we would see significant improvements, but we would not see any impacts on equity gaps. And in fact, in some cases, equity gaps were growing along race lines and along socioeconomic status. And so it's extremely important to finally disaggregate data. It's also absolutely essential, of course, to have the proper infrastructure for data and its use, but it's also critical to build people's capacity to effectively use data. All right, principle 7. This is about prioritizing the student experience. So efforts to improve the student experience, meet the evolving needs of students, and remove barriers to student success are visibly prioritized by the institution through the use of mechanisms that elevate the voices and lived experiences of students and the entire campus community. So again, this is a new principle that's grounded in a commitment to equity. And what we mean here is that qualitative research is absolutely essential alongside quantitative data. This is one of the places that those who are most committed to closing equity gaps are placing their attention as researchers. So student voice and experience needs to be prioritized. It needs to be placed at the center, and students themselves need to be treated like experts of their own experience. It's also the case that this work requires the creation of an authentic culture of continuous improvement, and that can't be done without close listening to faculty, staff, and those who are closest to students also. So those are the principles. I'm going to turn it back to Chris now to talk a little bit about the resources that are available through Strong Start.
Thank you, Allison, for that overview and your sharing to help us all understand how these core principles impact students in a meaningful way. At Strong Start to Finish, we have the honor of hosting the core principles, which again are a document from the field. We just get to be the stewards of this information. almost librarians of sort. And so we created a resource library where you can filter resources related to each of the core principles. They can be found on our resource library on our website, strongstart.org. All the publications are tagged to a core principle, allowing for you to go deeper on a particular principle. An interest in presenting to you today was to pique your interest and hopefully your enthusiasm to look at this work and try and continue and expand our understanding. Strong Start to Finish is the rare existence where research does have a direct and strong connection to policy. So we strongly encourage you to contribute your talents to the lines of inquiry shared today, to reach out to us and let us know what you're learning and share with us so we can make sure the field really has the best evidence moving forward. If there's something you're looking for but can't find it, always feel free to reach out to us as well. And so with that, now we are ready for questions.